Hello and welcome to Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster. I'm the host of the program. Oftentimes we feel depressed, we feel that life is difficult, and oftentimes we feel that we just can't go on. Well, when you or a loved one has that feeling, there is an organization around that has consistently been available for persons to reach out to them, speak to them, give them guidance, give them help when they are at their lowest points and feel that life is no longer something that they want to experience. And that organization is Samaritans, Inc. I've been fortunate enough to become a council member for Samaritans, and certainly for those of you who may not know, I lost my son to suicide in 2010. So I'm very committed to this issue, and I believe I call it my ministry. But the person I have today who has made it his life mission is the Executive Director of Samaritans Inc., Steve Mongeau, and I welcome him to the program today. So Steve, thank you for coming on Community Forum.
Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Well, as you know, you were able to get me to come on as a council member. You were both compelling and convincing. But it didn't take a lot because the mission of Samaritan is so important in our society. And I think we'll start there because a lot of people, they hear it. Many people from their biblical understand what Samaritan is. But let's talk about it from the standpoint of what is Samaritan Inc.
Well, we are first and foremost a suicide prevention organization, and we deliver 3 core services to the community. We are probably best known for our helpline, where you can call or text Samaritans 24 hours, 7 days a week to share any challenge that you're dealing with if you're despairing. We've been serving the greater Boston and the state of Massachusetts, for that matter, for 42 years at this point, or over 42 years. Founded in the 70s, actually by the granddaughter of Charles Dickens, the famous author. When she came over from England, she had been a volunteer at Samaritans in London, where Samaritans was originally founded. And the concept behind the helpline is that the best way to help people is to simply listen to them. And that in a community, other people are the best people to support one another. If we come together and help each other, we can make an incredible difference in someone's life. So if you're despairing or challenged with any issue, feeling suicidal, or if you're just highly anxious or have other challenges, you can reach out to Samaritans and speak to someone who will not judge you, will accept you for whoever you are, whatever the condition is. People who end their life often by suicide often feel they're a burden to others, or that they don't fit in, they're not accepted. So we hope to let everyone know, whatever your feelings are, they're okay. Whatever's going on in your life, it's okay. Tell me more about it.
I want to stay up for a moment on the helpline because, again, that if one is at all familiar with Samaritans, at least here in Massachusetts, I'm sure that folks have seen on the bridges, particularly going over to the Cape, there's the sign. I think you're also instrumental in getting the wiring and on bridges and the curved in. I know across the country, the curved in, to help prevent, because a lot of times it's on the bridges where folks will eventually take their lives. What are the types of things? There's 2 things I'd like you to talk about. One is I know you're familiar with some of the stories, and since we're not identifying individuals, I'm sure you can talk about some of the calls, but also the volunteers. I was just reading a report that you sent me this morning, and it talked about volunteers over the summer, persons who were there working from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., et cetera, in the morning. Let's talk about their process, because part of what I want to see happen here is I want people to, again, lend more support, both financially as well as their physical support, to the work of Samaritans. So why don't we talk about both of those, if you would, Steve?
Yeah, by design, it's volunteers who are actually accepting the calls, having the conversations with those who are reaching out, or handling the texting that comes in. And I can't say enough about the fact that we launched text about 1.5 years ago, because we clearly are seeing youth take advantage of that preferred method of communication. But to volunteer at Samaritans, you just need to be an individual that cares about your community and cares about helping other people. There's been a lot of research done that confirms that a crisis center staffed by volunteers is actually more effective than a crisis center staffed by professional clinicians. A big reason being, when a volunteer comes in and they are just good-hearted souls that are trained, we give a full 40 hours of training and coaching on the phones, but they're just there to listen without judgment to the individual reaching out. And we request that a volunteer give us a 9-month commitment of a 4-hour shift per week for that training, and to also help with 1 overnight shift each month. And so when those volunteers come in, you know, they close out the rest of the world, they give their 4 hours of dedicated listening or texting to that caller or texter. And you know, if I'm ever having a rough day, all I have to do is go in and talk to the volunteers and thank them, and they repeatedly say, "No, thank you. This is such a rewarding experience to be here, realize I can make a positive difference in someone else's life and possibly save a life." It's incredible.
Well, before I go over to maybe some not anecdotal circumstances that you're aware of, because I know you've told us that at some of the council meetings, the types of calls that may come in. I wondered, again, pushing for the ability for volunteers, because I know that with budget cuts from the state, et cetera, people's time, we've lost some resources as an organization, but also, you know, there's still some gaps in the call line that you would like to fill. So I want you to do the Steve Mongeau approach that you gave to get me involved. I want you to tell our viewing audience how they can get to you on that particular piece, where you're located, and all of that, just so they can get a sense of what they might be able to do if they're so inclined to become involved with Samaritans.
Yeah, our Crisis Helpline Center is in downtown Boston, near Downtown Crossing. And the simplest thing for you to do, if you have any interest at all, is to go to our website, which is SamaritansHope, all one word, .org. And you can go to the page of services and sign up for an info session, in which case we'll invite you in to spend an hour to an hour and a half learning about more about volunteering and the services we provide. And if you are still so inclined to move forward, we'll do a one-on-one interview. It's somewhat like going through a job interview to be sure you're going to be comfortable with the process, and you can meet some other volunteers and staff members. We can also, if it's a challenge for you to get to one of those info sessions, we can send you some information online via email, have you review it, and do an initial conversation by phone, and then meet you after that to remove that obstacle. And again, you don't need professional training. We have teens on the line as well helping with texting. So if you're 16 or older, we have working professionals, we have retirees, people from all walks of life, all faiths, all denominations. If you just feel that you can lend a listening ear to someone who's struggling, you can be a Samaritans volunteer.
Some people viewing this may say, well, I'm not going to call there because I'm not at the point where I think that I want to take my life. I'm not at that particular point there. I am sure that some of these conversations have been ones that may not have started there, but there's a progression that may get one to that particular point in time. And you said almost in the introduction of it that your call, if you're just not feeling, you maybe feel anxious about something, et cetera. Are there any examples that you can give? Because that's sometimes a better way to communicate. Because some people are going to sit there and say, well, this program is not for me. It's no one in my family. Even what are the signs? I mean, some of those things that we could explore would be helpful.
That's great. Thank you. I'll give you an example. If we also do suicide prevention workshops in the community, and I can talk a little more about that later, but at a workshop in a junior high school, we had a young 8th grade girl raise her hand at the end of the presentation and said, "So I just want to be sure, I think you told me that if I'm up late at night and I'm so anxious about my homework and I can't sleep, it would be okay for me to call or text you then? And we said, yes, absolutely. You know, let's help head off a problem and keep it small before it and other things pile on and pile on and pile on. So, you know, we're there for, if you're just lonely. The other thing, a lot of people reach out who have maybe shared some issues with friends, but they feel that, as I said, they're going to be a burden if they keep telling them. Or you tell a dear friend and that friend's going to talk to you, ask you questions tomorrow, and maybe you don't want that to happen. And maybe it's a relationship issue that you just need to get out of your system or talk through with somebody. So when you call Samaritans, we're going to be there anonymously. You remain anonymous. We'll share our name and ask you, but you don't have to tell us your name if you don't want to. But you can unload on the Samaritans volunteer and then not have to deal with being questioned or asked about it later. You can just call back later if you want to, but you don't have to.
Let's talk about the age demographics. I mean, you prompted me by that because when you talked about the 8th grader. What are you finding now as far as the age demographic of the persons who are making the calls? Because I know you have all of those statistics because you shared that with the council. What are the demographics looking like?
Yeah, to some degree, the demographics on the helpline, the phones, the callers, for the most part mirror what we're seeing in suicides in the community. You know, in the state of Massachusetts, we have averaged about 600 suicides per year over the last 5 years. 600 too many. And the highest rate of suicide is middle-aged white males. Now, when you call us, we don't pummel you with questions about your demographic situation. But in the conversation, people often will mention their gender or mention their situation in life, or if it's a student, might mention they're in school. So if they share that during the conversation, that's how we capture the information.
Sure.
The volunteers then record that. So I just want to stress, if you're thinking of reaching out, we will not you know, ask you a lot of questions, but if it comes up in conversation, we capture that information. So with you know, middle-aged white males being the highest rate of suicide, they in fact are the ones most calling the helpline. We have got, since we launched texting, it's youth. About 2 out of 3 texts are coming from people under the age of 24, so 15 to 24 as best we can gather. And but it, again, is across the spectrum. You know, the elderly who are maybe home alone, or maybe they're in an assisted living place, but they just feel like they need someone else to talk to, reach out to us as well. So we get the full spectrum of teens to elderly and everyone in between.
The reason why I asked that is because just I've come to learn in the demographics of those experiencing mental illness, the ages are getting younger and younger. I think at one point in time, 18 was, you know, the time or the experiential time when one might manifest some signs of mental illness. Right. And now it's middle school and is dropping down into the 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. That's why I wanted to ask whether those are some of the calls. And as you're saying, it could possibly be, because you don't necessarily inquire about the age, but you're getting youth for sure.
We are undoubtedly getting youth. And one of our big pushes to better serve youth has been the text service, but also, you know, I have to give credit to the MBTA and MassDOT, because once we launched text, they put out an ad campaign. There's now signage in the subway train stations. There's the electronic billboards throughout the subway system, the commuter rail system, and MassDOT is on the billboards across the state, calling out that you can call or text Samaritans 24/7. And as I've said repeatedly, most of the texts are coming from youth. The other thing, huge thing we're doing, is about half of the attendees to our community education outreach programs, we do suicide prevention workshops in schools. So and this past year we had close to 7,000 teens attend those suicide prevention workshops. And we also know the message is getting across to those young people because we've interviewed them months to a year after they attended, and they'll tell us, yes, I put the number in my phone. And also want to, you know, remind, you can call or text us if you're worried about somebody else. So we've had situations where we've had teens tell us, you know, I used to be worried about so-and-so or upset with so-and-so because I thought she was complaining all the time. And after Samaritans came and visited my school and shared some of the risk factors and warning signs, what I realized is she was depressed and needed some help, and I helped her get some help, and she's doing a lot better today. So that's the magic of having the conversation, opening up that dialogue. And we're also working this summer with some support from the community consulting team of Greater Boston. They did a pro bono research project for us, consulting project, where they're going to help us improve our social media outreach to younger people and help us expand the workshops we're doing. But this past year, we also worked with Boston Public Schools, and we're getting into the most of the 9th grade classrooms running that workshop.
I had the distinguished opportunity to work with you when you did a program with the city of Boston, speaking to, it must have been over 2,000 young people.
We're a big crowd that
over
day.
At the Agassi Arena over at Boston University, and we did a session on Samaritans, suicide, mental health, and interesting enough, was at a program last night, and someone mentioned to me that some young people recalled that particular program that you sponsored, and was helpful to them as they negotiated some situations which involved, mental illness. So it shows that you're definitely having an impact,
Right?
For sure, and with these particular schools, and and I also wanted you to mention about, because I read about you doing a program with Needy Meds, doing some things as well in terms of training their staff. I think is that the correct name, Needy?
Well, we're doing workshops. We do what we refer to as the gatekeeper workshop.
Okay.
So we do those gatekeeper workshops. It could be with guidance counselors in schools. It could be school nurses. Our therapists. It's first responders, firefighters, policemen. So any a group of people, and we did a lot of them with the street worker team in Boston, and a lot of the folks in the Department of Mental Health. I'll also share that we feel like we're part of the community network of services, because we'll have people reach out to us who say, my therapist said I could reach out to you between visits because I can't see my therapist till next week,
right,
but I'm really highly anxious today. So we work directly with a lot of therapists who hand out our information. While you were talking and mentioning last year, I grabbed my wristband. I realized it was stuffed under my shirt, so I pulled it out, because we also give out these wristbands at the workshops, and
I want you to hold it up because they may not be able to see it there.
Okay. I call it out. It has our 800 number, call or text 24/7 spelled out across it. And I mention it because when you referred to the workshop last year, we received some texts following that workshop from youth who said, I have been really struggling. One young man who identified himself as a young man said, I was thinking of ODing tonight. I looked down at my wrist, I saw your number, and I thought I'd give you guys a try. We were texting with him 2 hours later, and he agreed to get some help. So that's the power of getting the message out to people. And without a large advertising budget, it's a lot of grassroots work to let people know we're there for you 24/7. And back to the volunteering, we never have enough volunteers. So as much as we strive, we've been serving over 80% of the callers and texters who reach out to us, which within the Crisis Center world, if you will, is a great scorecard.
Yes.
But it means we're missing 15 to 20%, and so more volunteers will help us have those conversations with them as well.
I like to categorize in terms of what we've just discussed. So we've talked about your educational component in terms of both within the schools and the outreach, et cetera. We talk about the service component, which we talk about with the Lifeline in terms of the call centers and in terms of the volunteers. And I also wanted to talk about the specific type of help that one can receive. Beside, the opportunity to have a voice that you can speak to, there are relationships that Samaritan has where you can get folks when they definitely need services right at that particular point in time. So when we come back, we're going to talk about what the services that Samaritans can offer. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi, it's Gary LaPierre, and the crew wants to thank Maxie's Delicatessen. That's at 117 Sharon Street in Stoughton. They're 781-341-1662. American Cancer Society, yes, they're looking for volunteers. Drive cancer patients to and from their treatments. 1-800-ACS-6662, or just go to www.cancer.org. Ilsa Mark's Food Pantry in St. Anthony's Free Market, 2 Park Avenue in Stoughton. For more information, call Christine Gallagher. That's at 781-341-0611 or 781-341-0549. Meals on Wheels. Just ask for Jessica. You'll find her at 781-344-8882, extension 2. Stoughton Penny Saver. Our business is advertising your business, they tell us. 27 Rose Glen Street, Stoughton, 781-344-4833. Community Forum showtimes in Stoughton. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 6 p.m., Monday at 8 p.m., Tuesday at 5 p.m. It's on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 28. All comments and suggestions welcome. Contact us at communityforum1@yahoo.com. Samaritans, they're at 41 West Street on the 4th floor in Boston, 02111. Their phone number is 617-536-2460. 24-hour helplines for Samaritans, and the number is 877-870-HOPE. That's 877-870-4673. Samaritans, you can find them at 800-252-TEEN. That's 252-8336. Or find them online at SamaritansHope.org.
Monday night bingo at Ava Torah Congregation, 1179 Central Street here in Stoughton. It's a time to go out, have fun, have a little community, get together, spend a little money, and to help folks. If they can just bring that back for me for a moment. I think that I didn't have an opportunity to tell folks exactly what night it's on, but I'm sure that you saw it, and so therefore there are 2 nights when they have it. I know it opens at 4:30, and I think the games start at 5:30, so check it out and on SMAC's webpage so that you learn that. Hometown Business Show, Tuesdays at 11 a.m., Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., Sundays at 7 p.m., and you can view the show on Comcast Channel 9, Verizon Channel 28. We're going to come back because we only got a few moments here, okay. And so we were talking about off air. We were talking about a particular story that you wanted to be able to tell with, okay, sure. from the call line. So, if you would, you can start. Okay, there.
I'll just I'll mention briefly that one of the things that drew me to Samaritans was also the loss of my sister many years ago to suicide, and one of the things I wanted to do after losing Kathy and learning about Samaritans was to go on the helplines and take calls. And what really got me committed was I'll never forget a particular caller who reached out to us. I would guess he was around the age of 30. He had a young family, and he shared, it was around October when he called, and he shared that he was going to end his life that January. He told us how he was going to do it, why he was going to do it, and it was just gripping. And the tragic situation in his life is he had, in the prior year, accidentally backed up over his own 2-year-old son in his driveway and has lost his son. He was in such distress, he wanted to go join his son on the anniversary of that date to be with him, didn't want him alone, was his thinking. And as callers do, he called us multiple times a day for a while, and then the calls got spaced out more and more. And just prior to the holidays, he called and said, "Wow, thanks for being there. You've helped me realize I need to stay here for the rest of my family." And that's the magic of Samaritans Helpline in making a difference.
Well, I know you also have a program of families of attempt survivors as well. Talk a little bit about that program, let folks know about that.
If we are unable to get the prevention message across in time or intervene in time, we also do grief support. So if you've lost a loved one to suicide, we have safe place meetings. You can go to SamaritansHope.org to find the locations and times in 6 communities on a regular basis. So they're kind of a drop-in. So what we find is those of us who have lost a loved one to suicide, if we share our grief with others, it's incredibly healing.
Steve, thank you for being here today. Thank you for coming on Community Forum.
Thank you, Joseph.